Hey everybody, welcome back to the Back to Brilliance podcast. We're your hosts, Henry and Joseph. Thanks for tuning in. We ask that wherever you listen to us, that you would subscribe, leave a comment or a review. It helps great people like you find our podcasts. And with that, we're going to jump into our topic today. We're talking about shift your thinking, change your life. It's a thought, feeling, action loop. In this episode, we're going to dive into the thought, feeling, action cycle that controls our behaviors. We're going to learn how to create empowering thoughts that fuel confidence, drive action, and build a compounding loop of belief and progress. Master your mind and everything else follows. So with that, I want to bring on our co-host, Joseph. Say what's up, Joseph, and take it away.
How's it going, everyone? So basically, the whole premise of this episode is that thoughts shape your reality or even your emotional reality, if you don't want to go so far as reality. But one can argue, and many would argue, that it does shape your reality. And an example of this is every action begins with a thought.
Everything always starts with a thought. That's kind of like the seed that you plant, so it's important that, before you do anything, you think something, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. The key is to, frame your thoughts and, because they do determine our reality.
Yeah. So, for example, going off of that, sometimes we'll think like, oh, I don't know enough or I'll fail. And then boom, because you had that thought, now you'll have a feeling of hesitation or insecurity or whatever. But if you were to shift that into, I don't need to know enough, I'm confident in my abilities, then you shift that into more confident and accepting energy, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and it's just all about, perspective and the way we frame things, because the reality is, we're all going to have ups and downs, trials and tribulations that come in our life, unexpected, circumstances. But, empowering thoughts like this is possible or I can handle this, those are going to spark the momentum to get you going and, get the rhythm flowing.
Exactly. Yeah. And also not only that, but thoughts can create fuel for yourself. Like Henry just said, this is possible or I can handle it sparks momentum, which that momentum will then create enthusiasm, going off of Napoleon Hill. And so, thoughts will generate feelings such as confidence, fear, motivation, or anxiety. Basically, again, another example of this might work, or I know the steps I need to take, right? If you tell yourself that, then you'll feel organized and energized. Versus if you think like, oh, I always screw up, you'll feel defeated before you even begin.
And that's the thing, it's just taking the steps and planting those seeds, reframing the mind. I remember, I'll just share a little my backstory when I was leaving, my job and starting my business. It was tough, right? Because you don't know, what you don't know, right? So the feelings of, man, am I making the right decision? Am I doing these things? But in spite of how I felt, I would go to work and then I would come home and I would work on my website and I would work on the business things and I would do these things. And as I started to do those things, because these are the thoughts that I have to prepare, it began to energize me, and I began to feel like, okay, I think I got this, this is definitely possible. I can handle it. And the momentum began to happen. So, our thoughts definitely do create that emotional fuel.
Yeah. And all of this is to say, if you think positive things and keep your mind in a quote unquote higher vibration or a happier vibration, then you'll always maintain that energy, right? So if you're not beating yourself down before you even begin, right? Henry could have been like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, this and that. And then he wouldn't have continued. So again, if you change the thought, then you change the feeling.
Definitely. And that's the thing. You have to just understand that it's just a feeling, like when it's sunny outside and everything, it's like, oh, I feel everything's great. When it's raining and thunderstorms, you're like, don't feel like going out there, so just recognize that it's just a feeling. So you got to change your thought and your thought process, and just kind of reframe it. That's the best way that I can describe it.
Exactly, yeah. And so again, it's like if you frame or if you reframe it from what if I fail into what if I grow from this, well then, you're not putting yourself down or creating doubt in your mind. If you say, what if I can grow from this, or what can I learn from this, then it's a lot more inquisitive and a lot more inspiring in a way, because it's like, okay, I know I'm going to grow from this. What am I going to learn from this? And it will help you just develop self-awareness around your thoughts, which help you shift your emotional state. So again, if you try to really map out what you're thinking and feeling, there's a speaker who speaks about this, Howard Vernon. He talks about always ask yourself, what am I thinking and why? And that will tell you everything.
Yeah, and that's the thought discipline, right? It's the root of our emotional resilience. So it's always thinking about, you know, the best way, like I had to create that, right? And as opposed to, the glass half empty to glass half full mentality, and the only thing that changes is just the way we think about things, and it helps you to, control the feelings, so that way you can set yourself up, for the good stuff and, the positive in your life.
Exactly. Yeah. The glass half full. And I've said this in the previous episode, but there's another person who I've heard from say that the glass is overflowing, right? Because we look at, oh, the glass is half full of water, but we don't take into consideration that air is matter, and matter is something that has volume in a sense, right? And so it's overflowing with air. So if you look at it like that, well, then boom, you're like, oh, well, it's the abundance mindset. Not so much like, oh, well, it could be half full or half empty, but even if it's half empty, it's still overflowing with air regardless.
True. So if you stick with it, I guess you'll end up with a geyser, and that's gonna push you to that next level. So don't. The point is that we're trying to share is that changing your thought is going to change the feelings, the way you feel about things, because we can't just go based on our feelings. Sometimes they serve us, but sometimes they don't serve us, in the right way, because we lean too much or we give too much to that, and then it gets us into that realm of analysis paralysis. What if this happens? What if that happens? So the key is to take action, and the action begins with a thought. So just changing the thoughts, can create that emotional feel, and can change the feeling as well.
Exactly. That's what as Henry just said, emotion is the trigger for action, right? So if we don't feel like doing something, we're not gonna want to do it, right? If we feel anxious or whatever, it's gonna create hesitation. Versus if we feel confident in doing it, we're not gonna think twice about it. And so that's all that is to say, that we don't act logically, or we don't act based off of our logic. We act based off of our emotions.
There's a saying that goes, there's two things that motivate people or move people, right? It's pain or pleasure. And both of those are an emotional state, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to do this because of this or because of that. So we tend to be more reactive as opposed to being proactive when we allow our emotions to take the driver's seat, and it kind of blocks your actions, because you feel a certain way that a certain outcome may come about, and it may not, so it's always good to put those thoughts in motion and say, okay, I think this is possible and I can make this happen.
Exactly. And that will take you from feeling challenged to inspired, right? So anything that you can try to shift into making yourself feel determined, that way you can push forward through whatever challenge you have. Again, if you have a job interview that you're kind of hesitant about, well, I would try to analyze what are your thoughts and feelings about it, and then shift them into intentional thoughts and feelings, right? What do you want to think about? That way you can kind of embody what you actually want.
And that's the thing, is just knowing what you want, right? So sometimes you might feel a little overwhelmed or anxious, and that can cause procrastination and delay. So the again, the key is just making those decisions. Like we spoke on one of our previous podcasts, we were talking about, setting up your day at night so that way you're not, sleeping with these thoughts in your mind. You can get the good rest, wake up, and you're ready to attack the day, so and it sets you up, for action. So don't let the emotions control you. Start taking action now, planting those good seeds, and they'll bring about better results in your life.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I kind of want to pivot over to, just looking at both fear and courage. Both of those are a feeling. And so regardless of the feeling, just do it anyway, or just do it, right? It means that despite whatever you may fear, you do it regardless. Even though Andrew Tate is a very controversial figure, or even polarizing figure, one thing that I picked up on that he said is he doesn't base what he does off of happiness. Like, whenever he wakes up, he's not like, oh, what can I do to make myself happy? He says, what can I do to make myself feel fulfilled and achieved, and all those other things. He's like, if I have to do 1,000 push-ups, I'm going to do those 1,000 push-ups, because I'm not trying to see what makes me happy. I'm trying to see what makes myself feel accomplished.
Yeah, and courage almost always comes about from fear. When you're fearful, you find all the excuses. You try to run from it, but once you're cornered in it and you can't, then you have to turn around and fight it and deal with it. And once you overcome it, you start to get more courage and more confident. So the point is we have to do it in spite, of how we feel. We got to do it anyway. So if you start to develop that mindset and plant those seeds of, this is possible, I can do this, I can overcome this, I can, you'll start to build up that courage and that momentum, to help you to get through it.
Exactly. And so momentum is emotional, right? It's not a thought. I mean, you could think like, oh, I'm doing a good job right now, but ultimately it's a feeling of empowered, right? If you complete a task, it makes you feel empowered. And that kind of goes back to another topic or another episode we had, where we said, conquer the hardest challenge first. That way, that momentum carries throughout your day, because not only did you do the hardest thing, but now everything else will be easier. So then it will just kind of tumble and grow. It'll snowball into a lot more momentum, which that momentum will feed your next action.
And with that, your next actions, our actions are like mirrors, right, of our inner state, of what's actually going on. So a lot of times, even in my own life, I've seen it, and I call it like a forest of trees, right? So wherever you're at today is because of the results that you thought 5 years ago. So the key is like the seeds that you plant today are gonna grow a forest in 5 years from now. So if you're a constant procrastinator and you continue down that road, 5 years from now, you're gonna breed that field, of trees of procrastination, overwhelm, anxious. So a lot of times when we look at it like, how did I get here? Forget how you get here. I'm telling you right now, the thing that you can do is just change so it doesn't be the next 5 years.
Yeah, and that speaks directly to me. Just to give a personal example, I moved to Colorado shortly after graduating high school, and I was there for 4 years. And then I moved back on the 5th year. And, even though I grew as a person, even though I had a lot of great life experiences, and I grew as a person, I didn't really grow in my situation, right? I never had like a stable job. I was always kind of like doing small end jobs just to make ends meet. And so I looked back after those 5 years, 4 in Colorado, one back at home, and I was like, man, I didn't really do much in the sense of like actual fulfillment towards my life purpose or my life goal, right? And so that right there is a prime example of, I had thoughts and feelings of like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Another very quick example was I had to enlist, or I had to sign up for a new bank account because my the particular bank I was using wasn't there in Colorado Springs at the time, and so whenever I got a new bank card, I was like, okay, by the time that this bank card expires, I'm gonna have X, Y, and Z amount of money. Turns out I did not, so just things like that, right? We constantly talk about, are you moving the needle every day? Are you laying a brick down every day? And all that comes down from emotion or your thoughts and feelings, because your thoughts and feelings will keep you going.
Thanks for sharing that, bro. That's good, to so that you see, because procrastination, it and things that happen, we think, oh, it's a setback, but it's always a setback for the comeback, right? Like in seasons in life, things change, and what we thought was going to serve us then, we get here and it's like, oh, it's not working. I mean, for me personally, my why has changed. It used to be I do this, everything that I'm doing to, for my family, raising my family. Well, my kids are grown now, and it's a different thing. So like the why has changed, but my plans haven't. I'm still looking for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because that's what we're the best way to do things. So just again, remember the state that you're in right now. It's just a mere reflection of the seeds you planted 5 years ago. So if you don't want what you got now, plant different seeds. If it's working, then continue and keep planting those seeds, and share the wealth of knowledge and help others. So yeah, let's move on to our next point, bro. What are we looking at?
Yeah, basically, action is the bridge between thoughts and reality, right? You can't just think your way into success. You have to move into it, or you have to make yourself be it, right? So, a lot of people, and myself included, were like, oh, I want a fancy car. Well, I don't really want a fancy car, but, oh, we want to be a millionaire, but they don't do anything to become a millionaire.
No, and that's the key is planting the seeds. So whatever it is, there's different steps. We won't go through all of them. There's plenty of books and things out there, but the point is that the seeds you plant today is going to reap the harvest tomorrow. So the action bridge between thoughts and reality is that right there. Just putting those actions in play today. Because small wins, they compound into big shifts. So every time you do something, continuous and repetition, it begins to compound and build big shifts for your life.
Exactly, yeah. And again, every time that you do something that you didn't want to do, well, now you're like, damn, I'm capable of doing it. So then you start building confidence in yourself, which then it reinforces that thought feeling action loop, because let's say a week ago you were really hesitant to doing something around your house, right? Like doing the dishes. That's like a very common thing, right? And then you're like, hey, I'm going to change how I think and feel about doing dishes. And now, you're a little bit quicker to do them versus putting them off for 2-3 days. And now you do it every day because you're like, you know what? You changed your thought and feeling about it. Oh, I like having a clean house. I feel good when my house is clean, stuff like that, right? So then after you change it and you start doing it, well, now you're going to be doing it every day, because not only did you change the way you think and feel about it, but now you've had it. Now you've formed a habit from it.
And that's the thing. Once you create the habit, and that's a good habit. Then it's going to serve you and get you to the next step, and that's all everything is about, guys, is just getting to the next step, right? So it's like, again, maybe you're just stagnant right now, and you're not feeling any momentum, and you're feeling held back. Maybe it's fear, you can turn that around into courage. Again, like we talked about, just do it anyways, do it anyways in spite of how you feel, and a lot of times I always say that, like, I paint the boogeyman to be worse than it really is. And then when I get it done, I feel more accomplished. And I'm like, man, I spent more energy and effort trying to avoid it instead of just doing it. And then doing it, it gets done. And it's like, okay, well, no more stress, no more anxiety. It's like, it's crazy, but it's a mind thing, in your brain, of how we're wired, that we see, a problem, and all we have to do is just change it. Instead of calling it a problem, call it a challenge, and that's just the reframing. It's just changing the terminology, and now it's a challenge that instead of I have to, I get to, and those little tiny actions, when you do them consistently, eventually it begins to, compound and, reinforce, that loop. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And all it is just trying to reinforce the fact that you're capable of doing it, and the fact that you want to do it every day, or you want to build up that habit of doing it.
So again, guys, with that, shift your thinking, change your life, right? It's just a feeling, again, you can change it just by changing the thought patterns. Every action begins with a thought. Our thoughts create emotional fuel. So if you change your thought, you'll change the feeling. Don't let the feelings drive you or control your actions. Just recognize that, the emotion is our trigger for action. Like, we have to do something, in spite of how we feel. Don't let the fear overcome you. Take courage, and do it anyways, and with that, it's going to begin to build, good steps in your life. It's going to help you to bring about great results. Remember that, our actions right now is the mirror of what our inner state is, so, wherever you're at, you can change it, so, and just remember, small wins, build, compound into big shifts. So that's my thoughts on it. Joseph, you have any final thoughts upon closing it out?
Yeah, just the biggest thing is just keep track of what your thoughts and feelings are. Don't worry about your actions and the results of them necessarily, but again, if you're going through something, if you're fighting yourself, write it down. What are my thoughts? What are my feelings? And then what do you want to think and what do you want to feel about it? And so not only that, but if you're an entrepreneur, you're tired of doing everything alone, we have a community for that, right? So it will combine practical self-growth tools such as this technique of mapping out your thoughts and feelings with also community support. So you could have people that are doing that alongside you. And we have weekly structure to help you stay focused and follow through. So that will be at backtobrilliance.com. If you scroll down to the community tab, boom, you'll be there and you'll be connected to like-minded people.
All right. Thank you for sharing that, bro. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you for listening to our podcast today. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment wherever you listen to this or a review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, we're out. Till the next time, stay blessed.
Bye-bye.